Lorwyn Eclipsed is coming soon, and it has some fantastic designs for Draft. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down some of my early favorites, why I like them, and why it makes me very excited to start playing this set. We're starting things off with Boggart Mischief, which is 2 into black for a Kindred Enchantment Goblin, which means that it can count as a goblin if it's in your deck, or when you play it, it counts as a goblin coming into play for any things that care about goblins, which is relevant in this set. And it says, when this enchantment enters, you may blight 1. If you do, create 2 1/1 black and red goblin creature tokens. To blight 1, put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. And then, whenever a goblin you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So the reason I like this card so much is that it really kind of incentivizes you to go towards the goblins deck, but it's also going to be fine in a deck that doesn't use goblins as well, because you can make one of your creatures smaller, make a couple of 1/1s that'll drain your opponent. Maybe you have some changelings, which we'll see, which count as goblins in your deck. So even if you're outside of a dedicated goblins deck, this card can still do some stuff. The blight mechanic is one of my favorites I've seen in a long time because it gives you so much optionality. Where do you want to put that -1/-1 counter? Do you even want to put the -1 counter somewhere? I mean, it feels like generally you want to get the 2 1/1s, but I could see scenarios where you'd rather just have a slightly bigger creature to attack your opponent with, and then your stuff that you already have is dying and causing your opponent to lose some life. Overall, a really sweet design, incentivizes a deck without forcing you to draft a deck, but then gives you a nice payoff, and is also using the Kindred Enchantment Goblin type to have further synergy in certain archetypes. So it's a really cool design and something that makes me kind of excited when I see these sorts of designs. The next card we're going to look at is Burning Curiosity. For 2 into red, you get a sorcery that, as an additional cost to cast this spell, you may blight 1. So once again, blight, a mechanic, you can put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control as an additional cost. I just think blight is a really cool mechanic because downside mechanics inherently give you a lot of options, because when you have these little downsides, you get to be like, okay, do I want this downside for the upside that I'm going to get? And it gives you a lot of calculations, a lot of choices. So exile the top 2 cards of your library. If this spell's additional cost was paid, which is the blight 1, exile the top 3 cards instead. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So if you're using Burning Curiosity, oftentimes you'll want an extra card, but again, sometimes you need the extra board presence. Sometimes you might be limited on your mana and you might not be able to play all of the cards you exile, so you have to do the calculus of, am I going to be able to play that 3rd card that I get, or am I just going to try to be able to cast the 2 spells I get? You can just play the cards, so if you hit lands, you can play those lands. If you flip over 3 lands, you won't be able to play 3 lands over the course of 2 turns. Like, you play Burning Curiosity with a land drop to give, you play the land, and then you're like, okay, well, I can play these 2 spells next turn, maybe I don't have the mana to do that. There's a lot of options with this card, and it's a really cool way to get a card draw effect into red, really innovative design, and uses the blight mechanic. So I think a lot of the blight designs are really creative and really cool and are going to make draft very interesting and fun. Next card, I do want to highlight one last blight card, which I just think is pretty cool. It's another relatively simple design, but does use the blight mechanic. Dose of Dawnglow, 4 into black for an instant. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Then, if it isn't your main phase, blight 2. So it's an instant, so you can cast it any time, but if you don't cast it during your main phase, you get a downside with this blight 2. So one of the things this type of effect does is you would like play this at instant speed during combat to like bring a creature back and use it to ambush your opponent. But if you're doing that, you have to deal with the downside of blight 2, which maybe your deck can mitigate. If you have a random 1/1 lying around, you can just put the 2 -1/-1 counters on that creature to basically sacrifice that 1/1, and it just gives you a bunch of flexibility. Or if you just want to bring back a creature, you do it during your main phase, no downside at all. So once again, I think you've kind of seen a theme. A lot of these blight cards, one of the reasons I like them is they give you a lot of flexibility and a lot of like cool play patterns that you can set up, and also just like the cards themselves are pretty interesting effects that are going to lead to a lot of decisions during gameplay. But there's also other designs that are really cool in this set. We're looking next at Unexpected Assistance. So Convoke is a mechanic that lets your creatures help cast the spell. So it's 3 blue for an instant, but with Convoke you can tap your creatures to help pay 1 mana or generic mana or 1 mana of that creature's color. And it's draw 3 cards, then discard a card. So it's not a super complex effect, but it does have the Convoke mechanic, and I really kind of like these simpler designs that use Convoke because they do have a lot of inbuilt optionality, but they're also going to be relatively straightforward effects once you've kind of figured out how you want to use Convoke, because Convoke is one of those mechanics that also gives you a lot of choices, because this sort of effect with the draw 3 discard 1 is often at its best in like a control deck where you're trying to just like draw some cards, use removal spells. It doesn't necessarily play as well in a creature deck, because in your creature deck, you're trying to pressure your opponent, get a lot of things on the board, attack your opponent, do that. So your creatures, you want to use them for attacking generally and not for casting your card draw spells. And so this is a cool card for me because I think, okay, what sort of deck do I want this in? My defensive creature deck, I guess my blue deck, I'll try to get early creatures, use them to cast my unexpected assistance instead of use them to attack. And so it kind of changes the way you prioritize things. Can also be an interesting thing where you have to think, how many blockers do I want to leave up if I'm casting this during my turn to try and like hit a land drop or something? Do I need to leave up extra blockers? Can I tap this creature? Can I not tap it? And then of course there's the cool scenario where on their end step, you use this at instant speed, tap a bunch of your creatures so you can both hold them up for blocks, but also cast this during their end step and then be able to cast it for relatively cheap. But if you wait till the end step, maybe you block. I mean, you can cast it during the blockers step, but there's just a lot of things because of the timing of this card, because of the convoke cost. Even though it's a relatively simple card, I think it's going to lead to some interesting gameplay patterns. And 5 mana, you wouldn't want to play 5 mana for this effect, but if you're discounting by 1 or 2 mana and you're willing to tap the creatures, it can be pretty cool. So I think this is a really neat design as well. Good use of convoke. Next card, Flock Imposter. Another card that just gives you tons of options. It's a shapeshifter, so it fits into any of these Kindred synergy decks. It's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer, which they've realized is not a good enough card these days for limited, so they've given it a bunch of little minor abilities that can potentially help you out. So it's a changeling, so it's going to help you with any of your Kindred synergies. It's got flash, so you can cast this during combat to like ambush a 1/1. If that's a scenario, you can cast this to protect your creature, because when it enters, return up to one other target creature you control to its owner's hand. So you have that little upside as well. You can protect your creatures from removal spells. You can use this to give a creature like pseudo vigilance, like you attack your opponent with it in the late game, then you play your Flock Imposter, bounce it to your hand, immediately replay it, either to do like the pseudo vigilance, as I said, so the creature will be untapped and able to block, or you like use a like enters effect again, which is another cool thing you can do with Flock Imposter. Overall, I like these cards because sometimes you have this on turn 3 and you're like, do I even want to play my Flock Imposter as just a 3-mana 2/2 flyer to start attacking, because maybe I could get more value later. And so again, lots of choices, lots of options, and just a really flexible, cool card that I really like the design on. The next card is Tend the Sprigs. This one I think is really cute as well. 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Then if you control 7 or more lands and or tree folk, create a 3/4 green tree folk creature token with reach. So if you get to that like early stage of the game, you can like ramp your mana. 3 mana to ramp your mana though isn't a particularly great card. However, if you can get to that 7 or more lands and or tree folk, and remember, not only are there tree folk in this set, there's also the changelings, which are going to count as a creature of any type. So you have your Tend the Sprigs, you have your changelings, you have some lands. So maybe if you have like 5 lands in play, and like 1 changeling, you cast your Tend the Sprigs, get a basic land card to be land number 6. Then you have a changeling plus 6 lands, you get that 3/4. And getting a 3/4 for 3 mana plus a land is a really strong card. It's just like, how well can you enable it? Because a lot of the time, the downside of this sort of land ramp effect is in the late game, you don't need extra land, so it does nothing. Here you're getting a 3/4 with reach. Sometimes you could maybe even turbo this out. If there's ways, like you have a bunch of changelings in your deck, you can cast this maybe like 2-drop changeling, 3-drop changeling, turn 4, play Tend the Sprigs, get your 5th land, plus 2 changelings, get a 3/4. Seems like a really cool design. And again, lots of like decisions to make with this sort of card too, because sometimes you might be like, well, I could maybe use my lands to like cast a 6-drop next turn, but if I wait 1 extra turn, I can use my Tend the Sprigs to get a 3/4. So do I need that 3/4, or do I really need to cast my 6-drop? And like, how badly do I need whichever color I'm getting with a basic land? Because it enables fixing or splashes. Or maybe I just want it because I have a lot of changelings and tree folk. And it's just kind of a cool design space for a type of card we've seen a lot. And again, lots of flexibility, lots of cool things you can do. The final card I wanted to talk about was Eclipsed Flamekin. I think this is a really cool design because the hybrid mana, if the card is good enough, often leads you to just include that card in any red deck or any blue deck, because it's 1 blue blue or 1 red red, or because of the hybrid mana. So if you get a 1/4 elemental scout, when it enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You reveal an elemental, island, or mountain card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now, this card can be played in a red deck that doesn't use blue, or a blue deck that doesn't use red, but you lower your odds of hitting by a pretty drastic amount when you're not playing this in specifically blue-red, because maybe your deck has like 6 elementals in it, and then you have your like 9/8 mana base. So all of a sudden you're looking at the top 4 cards of your library, you're probably going to find either a mountain or an island or an elemental if you're playing a blue-red deck, because like almost half of your deck is going to be those lands. But if you're playing this in only a deck that has mountains, then all of a sudden you're like cutting in half the number of land hits you're going to have, and so you're going to whiff with this card a lot more. And so I think this kind of design space where it incentivizes you to play the hybrid mana card in the deck that is that hybrid mana is really useful, like really cool, and like I think interesting as well, because sometimes these cards can just be like generically good and you don't actually get to ever play it in your blue-red deck. And this card, sure, you can play it in other decks, it has that flexibility, but you also get the nice upside of being able to have a card for your blue-red deck that you actually want to be playing. Those are some cool designs I saw early on, giving me a lot of hope for this draft format. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time.